You're listening to the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. Tonight we have the amazing Kembra Pfahler, musician, model, actress, teacher, visual artist, and future feminist icon who's been based on New York City's Lower East Side since the late 1970s. She is best known for her extreme rock band, the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black. Welcome, Kembra. This is Lydia Lunch. You're listening to the Lydia and Spin with Tim Dahl and our special guest, Kembra.
Hello, Lydia.
Of the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black and Future Feminism. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk a little bit about that show that you did, the Future Feminist show, which was very impressive to me because it was so pristine and beautiful. And what it was you had a whole gaggle of different kinds of gals performing in different varieties in this very stark gallery. And the artwork, which were like the 13 tenets of future feminism, which were engraved on beautiful orbs of rose quartz. And it was very impressive to me because we're messy artists in a way. You paint yourself blue, you have occasionally broken eggs over your pussy. We wear a lot of makeup and funky clothes. But this was so aesthetically gorgeous that it was very impressive that it was so unexpected. And that all of basically the commandments were amazing. And the variety of women you brought to that were great. I was involved, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, it was 2014. Anoni, Coco Rosie, Johanna Constantine, and myself, we called ourselves an affinity group when we first got together to spend time trying to decide what we wanted to do together. And
with all your collective energies and what next?
I think it was the first time in my life that I'd ever really worked with my friends in a very collaborative way that exceeded just band work or working in Karen Black. It was an experiment with us spending a great deal of time together.
Because it took a lot to pull that show together. You're dealing with a lot of different people in a short amount of time to host the entire event.
Yeah.
And a lot of different personalities.
Yeah, it was an experiment, and we really didn't know what we wanted to do. We started to get together. We would do these things like retreats, which I think I got the idea from hearing about the women's retreats that you were doing in Ojai.
Well, they weren't retreats, but they were workshops for women writers.
Well,
I'm glad to have
I think the premise was about what happens when friends spend time with one another more so than just an hour.
Well, especially women alone.
Right.
I mean, You had Anthony and the Johnsons was part of this.
Anoni, and most of us were from theatrical bands or performance groups, so we weren't exactly academic feminists. We wanted our truth to be heard as imperfect as they were.
What were some of the tenets of the Future Feminist show? What were some of the sayings that were on these gorgeous rose orbs?
Well, let's see.
If you can remember any of them.
Yeah, well, it's funny because some of us were pronouncing the word tenet as tenets. The 13th tenet was the future is female. That got us in the most trouble. There was the tenet about protector-predator syndrome. And there was the tenet about the harm that's done to women and the earth is one and the same. That was the first tenet.
How long did this show go on for, and who performed in this? Because the performances were quite incredible as well.
Well, you were wonderful. That was I was in the front row with Jeffrey Deitch and a lot of other Lorraine O'Grady.
Because you like to smell it when I do it.
And it was just such a powerful presentation that you made. Lorraine O'Grady, who was one of my teachers when I was 17 years old. She was my surrealist professor at School of Visual Arts, was there. Laurie Anderson, Marina Abramowitsch.
I mean, this is already just an amazing collective of women of different generations, different practices, different concepts, or concepts as I like to call them. Yeah. And why hasn't that show traveled, or has it?
It has. We went to Arhus, Denmark.
Great.
And we were there all summer.
Oh, fabulous.
We did that show in a pig slaughtering factory that was abandoned. We decided not to invite performers to that show, rather to open up the platform for people from Arhus, Denmark, just because they never really get a chance to participate in things.
Well, and that's part of like when I do the writers workshop for women, and I'm going again to Scandinavia in a few weeks to do it, and I've done it there before. What's amazing is that because the winters are so dark, people read so much, they're so literate. But when I'm doing the workshops, it's so that I can have these people performing. That's very important to like bring them into the to perform.
I totally agree. That's
and
so
I think
essential.
it's very important for women because a lot of us write, but a lot of us might not have ever taken to the stage. So it's very practical application in a similar way that you were bringing the people of our house into the performance.
That was quite wonderful. We had a woman from Sweden, Victoria Cabeza, who was head of the Feminist Party, and she actually was leading Sweden. She was vilified because they found out that she'd lied about her college education or something, so she was derided and taken out of Swedish politics. But she actually came and met us there. The group Femin from Paris came. A lot of politicians and activists from Europe. And, I don't travel around Europe very often. So,
well, I mean, it would probably benefit you to do so more often.
Yeah, I'm going to do that probably in the next decade or so. But it was a good experience going to Denmark. And then we went to Utrecht. Ozzy Argento had invited us to do Future Feminism in Utrecht.
What year was that?
That was just a few months ago.
A few months ago. So you were on the same one, right?
Were you there?
No, you didn't.
In
no.
Utrecht.
Yeah, in Utrecht.
Well, I mean, I was at a festival that Aja was supposedly curating in Utrecht.
That was the same one.
Yeah, we
we
weren't there on the same day, though.
No, and Ozzy didn't make it, and that was really heartbreaking for me, so I stayed in my room most of the time.
Well, what did you do there anyway?
We did 3 events there. We did one event where we just had a talk with people from Utrecht. We had another live event with Johanna Constantine and I. We no longer do work with Coco Rosie. Our affinity group kind of collapsed immediately after the whole show in 2014. And,
maybe there were too many people involved.
I just think that it's sort of like principles of personalities. If they wanted to drop out and never open their mouths again, we couldn't force them to pry their mouths open.
Well, and it was interesting is, I've collaborated with a lot of people, all kinds. And I always think that art should be the sacred space where all bullshit is left out, where it's actually a marriage without a piece of paper to encourage people to be exactly what they are, to have ultimate freedom in, and not, and so I'd have to say that the hundreds of collaborations I've done have been very successful, but I feel like a den mother. I'd say only 2, and that was from macho male bullshit or insecurity. When they were not failures, they were still successful, but they were the only problems I ever had. But I don't know why it's been so easy for me to find. I guess because I'm a conceptualist, so I have a concept first, and then I find the people that are appropriate for that idea. And I've been very lucky in that fact that it's been very easy to work with everybody. And when you have a great idea like this, which was an experiment and which was very successful, sometimes, like bands, you have to change the members.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe you have new members coming because I think it's still a very important concept to bring female performers of all kinds that are forward-thinking, especially to places like Europe where they respect both politics, culture, art, and don't draw a divide, because it's very difficult in this country to do something like that.
Yeah, we're still doing Future Feminism. I'll never stop doing it.
And I would love to be involved again whenever it's the right time.
That would be wonderful. I want to do a festival and perform at the Apollo Theater.
That's cool. Great idea.
That's my favorite.
In whiteface.
It's my favorite theater in New York City.
Because we are all ghosts.
I get to hopefully meet Gloria Jones, the woman who wrote or was involved with Tainted Love. She's going to be in Los Angeles tomorrow. I mean, I'll be in LA tomorrow.
What are you doing in LA this time?
I'm going to play with Mark Almond.
What? Say that again?
I'm going to play with Mark Almond.
What are you going to play with him?
The Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black.
Fantastic. Opening for Mark Almond. Mark Almond actually took me in as a nomad when I was in London for a while. And of course, I did the Immaculate Consumptive, which was like a 4-day only show in America with Nick Cave, Mark Almond, Jim Thirlwell, and myself, which was amazing. I've always had a soft spot for him, and especially, speak about over-theatrical and really heartbreaking material, actually. He's a real sweetheart.
I agree.
Please send my love.
I will, and he has such wonderful taste. I just feel like getting to do a show with Mark Almond is, I'm not a religious person, but it's like dying and being in heaven.
Oh, wow.
But what's interesting about him is they did have some amount of success, but then after the success of Soft Cell, he still continued to do some incredible music, but kind of fell out of favor, or he still creates.
That was also an interesting collision of worlds at that time.
Absolutely,
and of course, he's from the north of England, and the fact that he could come down and use those big studios and even had access to do that.
And a weird full circle is, I just did a track with Annie Hogan, who played with Soft Cell, and Dave Ball produced it. It was the other half of Soft Cell. It's called Blue Contempt. It's on an album she's just putting out. So these things come full circle. Let's go back a little to the origins of what, even pre-New York City for you. Mm-hmm. Blonde surfer girl, really?
Yeah.
Holy moly!
And your dad was a professional surfer, correct?
He wasn't professional, but he was from a group of surfers.
This is in L.A.? Where were you?
Hermosa Beach, California.
Hermosa, yeah, a lot of big punk rock scene there.
And he made movies with a filmmaker called Bruce Brown, and they made wonderful 16mm films. And
what years were in the 60s?
60s, and he started in the 50s.
It started in the 50s.
So.
And would you say, that's when basically surfing really exploded in Southern California,
he
right?
Started it.
He's kind of part of that, yeah.
He started it with Dewey Weber and the Southern California surfers, and you can see that
way
in the
before
films.
Dogtown. Way before Dogtown.
Yeah, before Dogtown, and before the commercialization of surfing, and he didn't like the commercialization. Of surfing.
Did he feel guilty about that?
Originators rarely like the commercialization of what their artists.
No, but he's in this museum of surfing.
Does he still surf? Is he alive?
He's alive.
Is he surfing?
Name's Fred Fowler, and he speaks to me, and hopefully we'll surf together in the next couple of years.
So when did you first hit the surfboard?
Well,
4, 5?
He used to push me around on the surfboard. We'd surf, we'd paddle beyond the wave break, and he would say to me, that's where Jack LaLanne used to paddle out. Jack LaLanne, the athletic expert, used to paddle a boat carrying 12 people, and used to swim to Catalina. So my dad used to paddle me out on a surfboard and just tell me funny stories. And, women weren't surfing back then as much.
No, rarely at all.
This is why this is in the water 70s? A lot.
When you were
this was in the 60s, actually. I was born in 61. All the surfers used to kind of look at me and say, oh, when you grow up, you're going to be a really attractive honey, aren't you? Just let's get you to lose 10 pounds and grow your hair longer.
Well, and look, you know what? You outdid them because you are beyond a gorgeous. You ain't exactly a backyard Barbie, honey. You're more like a goth queen.
I don't know. I as soon as I learned how to buy
black eyeshadow,
number one black hair dye, as they say, it was over then. I just bought the black hair dye in the...
How old? 12? Did you start?
That was just about maybe 15, 16,
right.
Just a kid.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't start as young as you did, actually.
Well, who did, honey? I am 2 years older than you, so,
I know, but still,
not everybody, is like an adult at the age of 6.
I really always just marveled at your maturity. When I was, even in my 20s, I was thinking, my God, Lydia has already written like 20 books.
Well, that's an exaggerate, but I exaggerate too.
She kind of had to grow up fast, I think. So.
Well, I haven't written 20 books. There's no need for that. I've written 350 songs, but so what? I ain't done yet. Have you ever seen me at night? Off the stage? Mature?
I think mature is the wrong word.
Well, actually, I don't mind
I'd say artistically.
Look, if you saw a picture of me at 14, I was like a 40-year-old serial killer. I'm much more immature now than I was then, but glory be.
I hear you. I identify with that because I don't feel like I'm aging. I feel like I'm youthening and...
Euthanizing?
Yeah, something to that effect.
Well, I don't feel that I was mature, but I feel that I was disciplined, and also I was racing towards, not the finish line, but I knew the finish line would be there, and I had a lot of things to do before I came to it. So, for instance, I don't wake up and just go, I have to do something. I have to write something. I don't do busy work to be an artist. Like, when something has to be done, I'm going to do it. When I have a concept, I'm going to create it, find the collaborators and create it. A book needs to be written, a speech. But I don't sit there and if I'm not doing something creative, feel crappy about it. I live my life as a creative person. So I don't always have to be doing something that is a commodification of my existence. Just because I've done more than most anybody else I know, well, that's just the way it is.
It was helpful when when you wrote need, not to switch over just to talk about need to feed or something, but when you started talking about food, it was really helpful because I'd spent about 15 years not eating anything.
Was this a
talking about like
disorder,
cookbook
or-
need to feed?
I didn't have the largest eating disorder, but I just lived on cigarettes and donuts. And then
Well-
it was
Well-
interesting when you wrote need to feed. I was like, man, if Lydia's talking about healthy food, then I've got to pay attention to this because I didn't hear it when I was listening.
Well, look, our diets as kids were always terrible. I mean, even if
True,
your father
yeah.
was a surfer, I mean, American food was so toxic. Being poor, I had to start cooking for people because we
Right.
couldn't afford to eat out.
Right.
So I started cooking for people when I was very young, even though I had no experience in it. I just thought it would be, well, it's what I do.
Yeah,
but
that
I
was
wanted to
really
also bring
helpful.
other facts in. And I think it's one of the most intimate experiences besides sex. People are eating your fucking DNA, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Casanova. You smell my sweat, you eat my DNA. I know you're going to love me.
Yeah.
So I
that
like
was
to
helpful.
feed my friends.
That was helpful.
I touched it, you ate it.
I started about 10 years ago, I started passing out a lot from
Oh
being
my God.
underweight.
Well, it could have been the donuts.
Yeah, exactly. It was
But I mean,
sugar.
if you're told you're 10 pounds overweight when you're like 12,
Yeah, it's stupid.
and I can't even imagine you being 10 pounds overweight, but then again, you were on a diet for 15 years.
Who cares, anyways? But
I mean,
that
and
was,
isn't that the big, one of the big feminist problems? Like,
Hell
I'm not
yeah.
gonna, you know what? I'm not gonna lose that 10 pounds because you know what?
Yeah.
Some men, most of them, like it.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't care if you fucking don't.
Yeah, it's so that was.
Why
a
don't you
really-
gain 6 inches and I'll lose 10 pounds?
hello.
All right, I got a deal.
Hello.
It'd be easier for me to lose or gain 10 pounds than you to gain 10 inches.
That was really helpful.
Yeah, I
Lydia.
just lost 200 pounds of ugly fat and it didn't come off my body.
Hello. That was just helpful. And, hearing a message about wellness, if I heard it coming from, I didn't hear it coming from Suzanne Summers. I heard it coming from you. It had to come
I
from
am the
right
anti-Suzanne
source.
Summers. I'm more like the Wendy Winters.
So thanks for that. Thank you for that. That's been really helpful. That's been,
Well, I'm
when
come and eat at my house any day, honey.
when I'm on tour with my band.
What would Lydia eat?
I get WW, yeah.
Ellie.
That when I'm on tour with my band, I get really nervous when the band members aren't eating. I say, "Come on, you've got to. We're working hard."
Well, and it's very
You need
hard to eat good. I mean, in America especially, it's very hard to get I mean, in Europe, they feed you. The food is good. They cook
True.
for you.
True.
It's just a better quality of everything as far
Yeah.
as the arts are concerned.
Yeah.
So, all right, you're surfing, you're dyeing your hair black, and now what? You got the spirit of art in you. Suddenly, you're...
But you're also on a TV commercial as a kid as well, correct?
Yeah.
And how did that happen?
Well, my family was in the film business. My aunt was a casting director for Ron Howard and Catherine Bigelow. who
Okay.
did-
Great,
Who did
okay.
Near Dark,
Yeah,
and
great
she
film.
turned into a big Oscar-winning director. So my aunt was, and Stephen King, she worked with a lot, but she never really took me
Stephen King should
seriously.
write a book about you.
They don't,
Or a
they
film
don't-
starring you.
They that side of the family we don't really match.
I guess.
Well,
you're the real horror. That is the voluptuous horror.
Yeah.
How old,
Karen
how old were
Black.
you? How old were you?
17, I left when I came here. And
Well, how old were you in the commercial?
The commercial.
I was probably 10.
What was it for?
Kodak.
Here's a thread. She's from Rochester.
Kodak. Yeah, well, Kodak almost killed they did kill my entire family and gave 3 of them brain cancer. So thank you very fucking much. Can I get a check for that? How about putting me in a commercial, maybe for Kaiser?
Yeah.
Maybe
my
the Kaiser
God.
Report, if you want to talk the truth.
Roar.
Only some people know that joke. Anyway, yeah, let's jump ahead. You dyed your hair black. Did it change everything? Karen Black.
It
That would be
made
Kembra
people
Pfahler.
cry. It made
Oh,
people
parents?
cry.
Cry?
Yeah. It just made everyone cry.
Good.
It
Good
just,
start.
It just ruined everyone's life.
But not yours.
No, it didn't.
It improved yours.
It vastly improved my life. And
What a little hair dye will do.
I feel like people take women more seriously if you have black
Oh,
hair.
well, I will give you a little comment about that. Once I bought a long blonde Lady Godiva wig on Hollywood Boulevard, put it on, walked out on the street. Everything fucking changed.
Yeah.
The reaction, startlingly, completely different. And when you go from black to blonde, I imagine in our reality, it changes for the better. Because I didn't really need people honking at me.
Yeah.
When I'm like dizzy, I'm like, oh, you're blonde. It must be, you know what? I'll wear wigs, bitch.
Yeah,
Hello.
I just felt like I was taken more seriously, and I just felt like more like myself at any rate. And I always liked the dark-haired women of horror like Barbara Steele and Vampira and Carol Borland, and those were the people
Your
that
role
I
models,
emulated.
in a sense, of
Yeah,
course.
those are the people
Which
that I
you
liked.
embody in a variety of ways. I mean, their strength, their beauty, their darkness.
Well, it's been I feel like getting to be an artist for this long is a privilege, and as horrifying and as, tiring as it can be, it's been a very good life.
So, all right, you dye your hair black, you know you want to do art, and you decide to, how did you get to New York? How did you arrive here?
Just by plane. Flew here.
What year?
79.
So you come to New York in 79.
Yeah, I think
Amazing times.
my mom had a friend called Gary and Sonia, and they were horror film actors, and they had an apartment on the Upper West Side that was
Privileged.
abandoned.
Whoa.
And Gary had made films with Karen Black, the actress, and it was just a really busted, scary, haunted apartment that I walked into and stayed there for about 6 months. And I lived right near Hermosa.
Okay.
And I used to hang out every day
Looking for friends.
at Lincoln Center.
What were you
getting-
looking for at Lincoln Center?
Well,
Wombats.
I was being lurked on by all the extremely fat opera singers because I just
Whoa.
would walk around there and just think,
Haunting the place.
I just looked around. It's a beautiful stage. There's beautiful costumes there, and then Hurrah was happening, and literally everyone played at Hurrah. So I got to see everyone.
Who were some of the best shows you saw in 79 or 80?
Suicide.
Of course.
I saw a lot of bands from San Francisco. Why can't I access my memory right now?
Well, everybody played at Hermosa. I mean, everybody was playing everywhere from everywhere at that point.
I got run over by a car 2 years ago on 2nd Avenue and First Street, and it's affected my memory.
Holy shit.
I can't remember. I just can't access a lot of these.
That's okay.
Tuxedo Moon I saw.
Okay,
I
well,
love Tuxedo Moon.
One of my favorite albums is by Stephen Brown and Blaine Reinecker called 200 Years of Music Life in Portugal. It's an album I can't even play. I love it so much.
wow.
And it crushes my bones with beauty and misery.
Yeah, so they were one of my favorite
Okay.
bands. I saw them at Max's too.
Right.
Before I moved here, my uncle Eduardo took me to New York when I was 16, and we saw Tuxedo Moon at Max's.
Okay, so you knew you had to come.
I made my uncle. I said, we've got to see Tuxedo Moon, and I had access to that music just because when I was growing up in LA, we had Slash magazine, punk was really serious, and I was from the beach, but it was mostly Hollywood people that were doing all the.
And it was
the
a very
stuff.
different kind of music from what was going on in New York as well at that
True.
time. But there were a lot of great bands. I just saw the Flesh Eaters recently, and they were amazing.
I used to see the Screamers a lot.
Screamers were great.
Tomato
Yeah, it was
Debunny,
great.
Sheila.
Right.
I saw
X
Diamanda.
was great.
I saw
X was amazing.
all over.
They were amazing.
Venice.
Yeah, they were great. Beyond Baroque Poetry Place.
Wonderful shows. I saw Diamanda at La Hassa Club.
Amazing.
When I was just going to high school, and I'd have to literally run away from home and steal the car to get there.
Sure, of course.
But I mean, I
At least you had a
felt-
car to steal.
True that.
I'd
True
have
that.
to hitchhike or take the Greyhound.
Hitchhiked too. I hitchhiked also to get there from essentially the beach into Hollywood. But
From Hermosa Beach, which is not that close.
at that time we were in Santa Monica.
Okay, so that was a bit, but still an hour away.
It was an hour away, and there was only a couple of kids that were interested in that music at that time. And I didn't think of myself as unique or special or misunderstood. I just felt like, gosh, I was happy to find people I
Anybody
identified
yeah.
with.
So when you get to New York, and so what was the first? I mean, you had it in your blood that you were going to be creative anyway. I mean, you come from a creative family. So what was the first thing you started doing here? So you're meeting some friends, you're going to Haraz, you're going to Max's, Kansas City, but you're on the Upper West Side and everybody else is on the Lower East
I
Side.
moved down after about 6 months.
Okay, good
And,
move. Good move.
I really love the Lower East Side because I like the Puerto Rican and Dominican culture. They took me under their wings, the families.
Did they
and
think you
I-
were Santeria?
Well, no, they just thought I was just a beat up kid who didn't wear
Okay.
enough clothes. And they were always saying, Kembra, put this jacket on. Kembra, come over for dinner.
Have some food.
Yeah, here.
You're too skinny. See, now you were too skinny. You get to New York and you're too
I
skinny.
was too skinny. So
For the Dominicans.
my Dominican and Puerto Rican neighbors, Maria Orama was one of them. She was a Santeria princess, and she gave me all of my doves and my turtles and my animals that I had, and taught me about food and taught me how to live, So
We thank her for that.
yeah, and Maria was wonderful. She had long black hair and 9 children, and she lived underneath me in Lower East Side.
When I got my first apartment on the Lower East Side, which was $75 on 12th Street between A and B, but it was between 2 abandoned buildings that had garbage 6 feet high. And they didn't want to rent it to me because the guy who had lived there before me had electrocuted himself with his TV and his dog ate his face off. And it had burned one of the paintings on his wall. And the landlord said, I can't rent it. I can't get rid of the smell of death. I go, let me try to get rid of the smell of death. So I went around the corner to the Santeria, said, I need to get rid of the smell of death. And they gave me a small bottle like that with the skull and crossbones on it, not marked. I put a few drops on, smell of death gone, $75 apartment. Thank you. Welcome to New York, Lower East Side.
Yeah, it was very inexpensive, very family oriented, and they were beach people too, a lot of those people.
From the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico.
So, and my first friend was Gordon Curdy. He was an artist that I collaborated with who died from AIDS at age 27
Yeah,
in
it's a lot of tragedy at that point.
86.
So what was your first art projects then? What were you doing when you
First art projects were with Gordon. We did performance live at places like, there was a place on Jane Street. There was
The Pyramid?
Pyramid, we did too.
ABC
a lot.
No Rio? Or?
ABC No Rio, I did a week-long series of performance called The Extremist Show.
And what kind of shows, what kind of performance did that involve?
They were unpopular, unentertaining, ugly shows that no one would come to.
Can you describe what went on in these? Sounds divine to me.
The paint wasn't dry on the floor, so when people walked in, they stuck to the floor. It was freezing to death. I stayed there overnight. I slept in the window. That was one of my first performances. My first performance where I tied boots to the back of my, and walked with the boots trailing behind me. And they were all without sound, so that it was probably a little bit boring maybe. And the visuals I thought were just beautiful, but not that many people really loved them. I was just trying to find myself,
One art installation I had in L.A. was I went to Inglewood or Watts, to all the thrift shops, and bought as many beat up, high heel shoes as I could, and I nailed them all going up the wall, and it was called You Make Me Climb the Fucking Walls.
That sounds
You're dragging
gorgeous.
your boots behind them. I'm nailing boots and shoes to the wall. This is Lydia Lunch with the Lydia and Tim doll and Kembra Pfahler, the voluptuous horror of Karen Black and Future Feminist. One and all, take a 1 minute second here to take a breath.
Sounds good.
So you start doing these performance pieces that nobody wants to see. And I mean, performance art, some of it was popular in those days and some of it wasn't, because there were a lot of clubs. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things going on. And even like today, sometimes there's 10 people at the greatest show that nobody else has ever seen. When did you decide to then take it into music?
I think it was around... from 1980 to 1990, I was experimenting with making films. And
is that how you got involved with Richard Curran?
Yeah, it is. And Samoa had been in a band called Johnny, and he'd also been in a band called Balls, and he knew how to play guitar, and we were living together at the time. And I don't remember if we were married, but we were together quite often, although we had separate dwellings. So we had a really wonderful artistic marriage because we each had our own separate domains, and we were together for a really long time. But at one point, around 1990, Samoa said, why don't we start a band? And I was really afraid of the microphone for a long time.
Because a lot of your performances before that, you said, had been silent.
They were silent, and I just didn't have
like
a
a
voice.
silent movie star.
I think, I'd had a drug and alcohol experience problem, and it took me having to quit doing all that bullshit in order to
Focus?
sing.
Sing, yeah.
I started a rock band after I put down drugs and alcohol.
Well, and it's interesting because a lot of people turn to drugs or alcohol to boost their security, or so they think.
Performance-enhancing drugs.
Exactly. But in your case, when stopping it, enhanced your creativity.
Well, it was just sort of practical because we got to go on tour all through the 90s across the United States, and we never got arrested or had to Jones or had to
deal with any of the rest of the bullshit of being an addict.
It's just time consuming.
It's just boring.
Yeah, it is.
So describe the music of the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black and what those stage shows were like.
Well, I felt like you've been really influential because I always felt like if I were to do what you were doing, I would, you would hunt me down and slaughter me.
Well, what do you mean by what I was doing?
Can I ask? Because I want
Well,
to.
Lydia was doing no wave, you're doing spoken word, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do?
Well, I would have welcomed the company, honey.
I thought, what can I do that's going to have my own signature on it? And at the time, I just did something that wasn't popular, which was classic rock.
Well, and certainly what I was doing was not popular and still isn't. Don't worry about it.
I'm from Los Angeles, and I grew up listening to the radio. I grew up, my mom's second husband was contract lawyer for Parliament Funkadelic.
Cool.
So
Casablanca Records.
By the way, Tim and I are starting a band called Cuntadelic.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm
No,
not.
she's not.
Sounds amazing.
It's going to be.
Well, it's
We
going
might
to
need
be.
your Parliament connections.
Have
Go
to
ahead.
raise one finger to get that ticket. That's what we
That's
do.
right. That's one ticket sold.
And so I got my mom's second husband, his name's Larry Ball. He came into my mom's house. He is from Detroit, and he brought in so many musical influence and so many records.
And that just opened your world to the possibilities.
And I've always been really close to my mother and my family, even though it's difficult to get along with family members. I just decided very early on that I was going to remain close to my mother. We had a lot of kind of like Gothic American, horror stories in my family. And my mother had me when she was 18, and I just love my mother to death. And
well, then you love women, and I think you like being around women. Some
do.
women.
I do, actually.
That's why the Future Feminist.
I do.
As well.
Chloe Blackshire, my band member, has been in the band since she was 11.
Nice.
She's, how old are you now? 18. So she's
Legal
been with
tender.
us. She's been with us singing and doing wonderful music.
It's important to have female connections in this male-dominated, patriarchal,
agree.
kleptocratic bullshit society of murderers and homicidal, genocidal creeps and tyrants.
I agree. So it was just...
And the dictators.
I felt like my indigenous music was verse, chorus, guitar solo, verse, chorus, out. And that's sort of...
Well, so you took
kept
a
it simple.
traditional format, but you perverted it with collie blue, body makeup, nudity, bowling balls, and cracking eggs on your beautiful puss.
And I remember there was a lot of years that all the record companies would hunt us down and say, if you just, acted or dressed like a pretty girl, we could
Dye
give
your
you
hair
a
blonde
contract.
again. Dye your hair blonde again.
So what did you say to them when they would pitch such
Suck
ideas?
an egg, I hope.
Yeah, I just...
I'll crack one. Can you suck it?
Yeah, I just found it laughable, and I knew that it was more important to do good work and to just carry on, and I don't know, I just found it laughable.
Can I ask, when was the first time the two of you met?
I remember playing at a performance that Hattie at the Pyramid had organized, or someone had organized us to do a night together at the Pyramid. We just were on the same bill, but we didn't really speak to one another.
No, I didn't. I don't remember it at all, but I'm sure we did.
I think I was always aware of Lydia and her work
and afraid I was going to beat her up for no reason.
Not beating me up, but I just felt like
she had a suspicion I did like to slap a bitch or two occasionally, but not her.
It wasn't that you were going to be violent, or it wasn't about that. It was more about the integrity around the work being done, because I felt like it would be rude to emulate work that you were doing.
It was Neon Music that brought us together. Who was just, you have to meet Kembra, you have to go on her radio show, because you were doing a podcast called Performance 101.
Yeah.
He goes, no, you have to go. And I'm like, yes, I do, because we had been on the same scene, although, I was in and out of New York. I mean, I I was in New York from 76 to 79. I left in 80 to 84. I came back for a few years, and then I left in 1990.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in New York like you and Billy the artist pretty much nonstop for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
I was in and out.
Yeah.
I left my mark. I shat in the face of history, and I had other territory to go piss on.
Yeah.
But so Neon Music brought us together a few years ago, and then that's when we actually started to
Yeah, Neon's a great artist.
Got to know you.
Neon's great, and I'm actually going to be playing with Neon in Los Angeles.
Oh, cool. Of course you are.
Neon's on the
rap. That's what Neon's doing now. Rap.
Neon's also doing rap, and still plays guitar wonderfully. Still does rock songs. We did a song together called "Walking Down Leg Avenue."
Yes, I know that. Leg Avenue is a underwear and stocking company that it's sleazy, cheesy, but there's still a few good things in there.
So speaking of underwear and stockings, you worked for Calvin Klein for a little while. How did that happen?
I got chosen to be a Calvin Klein model in
Amazing.
the early 90s.
Oh, there's the fat girl with the blonde hair that now has black hair and big eyebrows.
Yeah.
And
Hello.
What year was this?
Early 90s.
Hope that boosted your self-esteem.
Well, it was funny. The day that we shot Calvin Klein, I remember being...
What were you wearing?
Same thing I wear now, whatever's available. You know,
you didn't have to wear his clothes.
I went there and he said, "Look in the clothing department, choose whatever you want." And I chose a A-frame kind of like pencil skirt and just a black T-shirt.
I would have chose Mark Wahlberg's underwear, but that's just me.
That's a good idea.
Well,
but Jennifer Harema, Kate Moss, Joe D'Alessandro, Anita Pallenberg.
Right, yeah,
we were all in the same room
there
together.
You are. How do you feel, honey?
No one was talking to one another in this room. And,
creeps.
I was the one that...
Fucking creeps.
I was the one that had
Kate Moss doesn't talk. She's not go fucking... She doesn't have a fucking brain.
I had to break
I'm
the
sure she
ice.
has a tongue, but she's got nothing to fucking say. Best thing about her career, she's never said a fucking word.
Yeah, I remember she was friends with Jonathan Shaw. She said, "Oh, do you know Jonathan Shaw?" I said,
God.
"Yeah, we knew Jonathan Shaw." And there was, what was that other woman's name? Mila Jovovich. She was there as well. Right. And she was walking around barefoot singing Neil Young songs.
Oh, yikes.
Keep your fucking shoes on, bitch. How did you feel being the only authentic person in the room?
Well, I was the only one who actually talked. You know, I said, "Hey,
the girl
everybody."
that used to be silent,
yes, exactly,
overweight and blonde, fuck you, is now talking to empty-headed celebrities who are known for their cheekbones.
Yeah, I said to everybody, "Isn't it funny the way we all get together and we just sit here with blank stares? We're probably never going to be in the same room together.
But why would you
why don't we
even...
talk?
Well, and let's define this. The minute we were in the same room together, we couldn't stop talking.
Hello.
And there we go. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Darling, Kembra Pfahler of the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black, Future Feminist, and various other creative endeavors which she will not stop doing and will continue whether you like it or fucking not. That is one thing she did learn from me, or was encouraged from me. We are not, or have we ever been truly popular? We don't have to be. We are truly authentic.
I feel like...
and more authentic because we just won't stop or shut up.
I was thinking how funny it would be to make, a perfume that was called the authentic smell of black or something, like the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black. And what would that smell
like? Well, there is a woman in Hamburg that has a perfume company that she made a perfume. She makes perfumes to one of your songs, and she made one to one of my songs. But I tend to wear, it wasn't the right tones for me, but it was a good idea. And she is there, so maybe you have to look into this.
I like vetiver, and I like...
Well, I only wear oils. I don't wear, perfumes.
I wear oils as well.
So, maybe we have to go... And you know what? The strange thing is, Billy Shire of La Lusta, who started the soap plant, I've been wearing his oils for years. He started one of the best galleries in America.
I love that gallery.
And by his mother making handmade soaps. And his oils, because people are always like, "Oh, what are you wearing?" I'm like, secret oils.
Yeah, I don't really, I share my oils with my band members. One of them's Cleopatra, it's vetiver based, and no one really likes patchouli. My parents make me take off my oils when I enter their home because it makes them vomit.
I haven't noticed that you smelled anything but good, but I guess you'd hold the patchouli when I'm around.
Yeah, I've got Cleopatra on right now. It's offensive. Maybe
you use it as a deterrent.
I do, actually.
It reminds me, one of the most gruesome things that ever happened to me in New York, and very few things ever happened to me because they knew I was the predator and the aggressor. I'm walking down 2nd Street between Avenue A and Avenue B, leaving CBGB's, 77, and some guy yells out at me, hey, do you want to fuck my dog? I'm like, fuck your own dog, you fucking asshole. I don't know why that just came to me. It was something about offensive, deterrent.
Well, I saw a similar situation with that big woman that had a dog that was pissing everywhere. That was like a couple months ago, and you're like, kill your dog now, it's too old, and she fucking got in your face.
I don't remember, but I like what Nick Tosches once said. He goes, I hate to see a beautiful woman picking up dog shit. That's why you get a cat.
I remember Samoa and I were walking down 2nd Avenue and 8th Street in the middle of a sunny day, like a winter sunny day, the bright white of the winter, and these 2 homeless people were fucking in front of the movie theater, and the guy was on the bottom, but his legs were over, touching his ears, and he was also taking a shit at the same time.
Now that's a story.
Brings me back to my story about Phoebe's Cafe, where I was sitting trying to have a cup of coffee in maybe 1980, and a homeless man walks down the street, pants down, shitting freely. I'm like, the coffee tastes bad enough. Please give me a break.
That's actually making my heart pound just because that was one of the truly funniest stories. And to hear Samoa tell that story, he's like, oh, you've got to hear the closest story of my life. The closest story of my life, my wife.
My wife and my life.
And those were some scenes that we got to see back in the early days of New York.
It's reminding me of some of the homeless people that used to live down by Grand Street when we had a rehearsal space for Teenage Jesus at Bradley Fields, and there was the nose. When the homeless people literally had a nose, W.C. Fields-esque, hanging by one side. There was the foot. It had one giant foot that stunk a block away. And there was Miss Diana, which was like 2 wigs on top of each other, totally helter-skelter. But this was when New York had a lot of color.
Yeah, there's a lot of people lately that are homeless in the year 2019. I've been noticing a lot more people are living on the streets.
Yeah, a lot of that had to do with Giuliani threw a lot of poor people in jail, and you can't keep people in jail forever
because they're poor,
and then they come back. A lot of them are also living in
wait till you go see downtown LA, because that is really taken off.
That's the next level.
Well, look, so many people are one paycheck away from being homeless. In these times, when it is the kleptocrats and it is the billionaires running government that have respect only for dictators and other maniacs, the rest of us are going to suffer. I think the art commune is coming. It has to. There's going to be no choice. We're being priced out of everywhere. That you've managed to stay in New York for as long as you have, that Billy the artist has, and a few other people, it's only because you got locked in that long ago. Because anyone trying to come here now to live, do not come here unless you are a computer expert. Do not come here with an artistic hope on your sleeve. You will fail, you will fall, and you will be homeless on the street, fucking and shitting at the same time while I'm trying to have a cup of coffee.
It's true.
Don't come here.
Yeah, don't. And
there's a million cities to live in. New York is not the fucking center of the universe. It's the anus of the universe.
It is.
Just saying.
True. But you know what, Lydia? One thing that we did, Lydia and Tim, one of the reasons why I was able to stick around is because my building, the people that lived with me on Avenue C and 2nd, we started a tenants association.
Exactly.
And we educated ourselves about what our legal rights were to have low rents. And it was extremely time consuming.
Absolutely. It went on for years.
It went on for 20 years.
Exactly.
I was in court for 20 years.
Unbelievable. That's what they want to do.
I had to fight really hard.
Did they try to intimidate you through construction and do all these typical things?
They did everything they could, but some of the Jack Waters and Peter Kramer, they were ACT UP members. So I had people in my building that were some of the hardest fighters that you could ever know.
Well, I mean, the burnout of the Lower East Side and the Bronx in the mid and late 70s. New York was bankrupt at that time. So they had to cut the fire and the police department, but specifically they cut it so that they could burn out low rent-controlled buildings where all the weirdos, the artists, the queers, the minorities lived, because real estate, and this was a real estate scam, because they think in 30-year terms. We think in 30 days. Can I pay my rent next month? So the burnout of the Bronx and the Lower East Side is what led to there now being condos that cost $4,000 a month, where we used to pay $75, $150. And this was a concentrated effort that no one could stop because of people like Donald fucking Trump and other real estate kleptocrats.
Right.
And so therefore artists are getting pretty much shafted out of everywhere. And so therefore the art commune better be on the horizon. You know what, Joshua Tree, we might be coming.
Mike Bloomberg, that's what stop and frisk was, because the renters' rights are based, you can't discriminate based on sex, sexual preference, age, race. You can discriminate if someone has a criminal record or not. So basically, just you can stop and frisk anyone. You can get a scarlet letter on any motherfucker.
Right.
And this is like, Bed-Stuy, and then once your lease is up, it's like, hey, and then you're gone. You're done.
Chloe Blackshire's family lived here. She grew up on the Lower East Side. She's 18 now. So her mother, Glennie, was an artist. They lived on the Lower East Side as well. So Chloe's part of a generation, thankfully, whose mother and father are artists and stuck around. So that's why I get to work with an artist like Chloe Blackshire. So there's a few of us left here. But I feel like one thing that happened with Future Feminism, one of our tenets was about relating to time and differently than how people relate to time right now. And it's important to think of how these changes in the economy will affect. There's this theory about thinking 6 or 7 generations ahead, which is an indigenous principle. Whereas, for example, if you're going to tear down a building on C and Second, will it still be standing in 7 generations? How will it affect the sunlight and how it's hitting the block? Most women that I know and most indigenous cultures, this was a practice that was by grandmothers from indigenous tribes who said, I want to know that in 7 generations from now, the children and the people will be all right. And now with someone like Trump in the government, the interest is only in money and making fast money, which is called eminent domain.
Exactly.
And eminent domain is something I'm highly against. And I feel that that's the problem, is that the way we're relating to time, there was something that I just learned about, Lydia, and I don't know if you know about this, about the flaneurs, the people around Oscar Wilde's time, and they were known to be people that were just loafers, and they walked the streets. They walked the streets as dandies.
Doing nothing beautifully.
But they also had a different relationship to time.
Well, I like to say time is one long second that goes on forever.
Time's an amazing thing.
Yeah. That is true. That's incredibly profound. It's true. I was thinking of, how can we activate some sort of change? And I thought to myself, what if we made a massive movement where we all just decided to walk incredibly slowly?
That's funny.
Just to annoy everyone. Like a flaneur.
That's funny.
A dandy, looking beautiful, doing nothing beautifully. Well, and that's part of the problem, I think, of this society now, time the way it functions now, is that everyone is panicked for time. They're pressured. They don't have enough time, but they waste so much time in useless pursuits. For instance, on the internet. Yeah. Hello, are you listening to me now? Because it consumes your time without fulfilling your life. Because fulfillment means intimate conversations, one-on-one, like what we're having now, face-to-face. It does not mean reading blogs or communicating in virtual reality.
I agree completely.
The enhancement of life means intimate communication on a direct level, hence back to the art commune. So time right now is so pressured, people are so panicked for time, and then they're busy with busy work, and they don't know how to do nothing beautifully. And I think that's where people are afraid to sit in a room quietly by themselves. They can't stand it. There's so much noise everywhere, so much chaos. Shut up, sit down, do nothing. And if you can't stand yourself, change yourself. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Tim, and Kembra Pfahler of the Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black and Future Feminist Lee.
I'd like to comment more on time because, so the three of us are performers. We've been performing for a long time. And I've always thought this, when the audience reacts very differently when the tempo changes, you do something really slow or really fast, we're so programmed by the 60 seconds per minute, 60 minutes per hour, 24 hours. It's escapism for the audience. You slow it down and you take them out of that internal stamp. And it's a vacation. It was a mini vacation.
I feel that my chronic insomnia and the way that I just like sleep in 1 or 2 hour shifts, not because my mind is overactive, that's my body. Because I am kind of like the hot rod of women, as Robert Williams described me as. It's not my mind that's overactive, it's my body. And I think because I sleep in these pattern shifts, I have a very different relationship to time.
Okay.
First of all, I have more time than most people because if I slept 8 hours, I'd be sick. So, jet lag, I never have it because I could maybe always be in it. And as prolific as I may be and as much work as I get done and as much work I have to do what I do, I can be extremely the laziest bitch in the whorehouse. I love to lie down. I love to binge watch TV. I like to read books. I like to be quiet. I like to go out with friends. I like to have as much time as I can have. And it's not that I'll sleep when I'm dead. I might already be dead. I'm not sure. But if I am, I'm the most lively ghost I know.
I think I remember when Genesis Peorage came to town, Genesis did a performance it was at the disinformation conference that I did with Richard Metzger.
I love Richard Metzger.
And Genesis was talking
Dangerous
about...
Minds, disinformation, everything you know is wrong. Out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
No, Cincinnati now.
And Genesis just talked about gestures that one could do that could present a different paradigm of activity. And Genesis did a performance that was so simple. They just simply said, when you wake up in the morning, rather than waking up on one side of the bed, try waking up on the other side. And every day do a contrary action in the simplest way see what happens.
How about every day when you wake up, you don't turn on your phone or check your internet, but you sit quietly for about 10 minutes and you just go inside instead of looking to something from the outside that's going to make you feel alive.
That's what's a wonderful suggestion. And I got a job recently. The students from Columbia advocated for me, and I got to teach a class at Columbia. And that's what we do. One of the exercises that we do is we wake up and do, I know it sounds very hokey, but we do the morning pages. That was the Julia Cameron suggestion. She used to be married to Martin Scorsese, and he was such a coke whore for so many years. He just ignored his wife forever, and she ended up having a breakdown and writing a book called The Artist's Way. And the morning pages is a wonderful suggestion about 3 stream of consciousness pages you do before you do anything else. Before you turn the phone on, before you eat breakfast, you just kind of dust bust your brain.
Exactly.
And I love doing that with my classes, but no one ever does it.
Because they can't stand it.
They can't do it.
They can't stand themselves.
They cry.
Everything is now constructed to take you away from yourself and outside into something else that preferably you can buy.
I think you've done it before, haven't you, Chloe?
I've never done it with you, but I think I do it on my own.
Chloe does that too. So... But I've learned so much from you, Lydia. I wanted to thank you so much for even
thank you for studying me. I'm a specimen you've studied.
Not even
maybe one of the animals you want to save.
Not about studying at all your work and your aesthetics and the sounds, and just you've done such important work.
Thank you very much.
It really lifts our spirits.
And you're doing it, and I'm glad I inspired you to do it as well. Because we need more women and more men.
We do.
Creating outside of the mainstream that is true to their fucking spirit, that will not be stopped, distilled, homogenized. If we can commodify it, good on you. Please come to me. I'm here to promote Trojan, Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, or anybody else that profits in vice, which is what I also like to do, to allow us to be what we are, which are people that in all of this insanity have managed to maintain our life and are not going to stop creating, no matter how unpopular or popular we become. That is what it's all about. If it boils your blood, you do it. If it doesn't, you're not an artist.
Yeah.
This has been the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Kembra Pfahler. Future Feminist, the voluptuous horror of Karen Black. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I love you, baby.
Love you too. Thank you.
Safe travels tomorrow.
Thank you.